طيب, so we inaugurate this Dawah. We're speaking about the affairs, like we mentioned, everyone. I'm sorry. But this time now is 9:33 p.m. Friday, September the 3rd, 2021. We're on the Hijri calendar, which is the correct calendar. It's now the 27th night, if I'm not mistaken, everyone. 27th night of Muharram. And it's technically this night of Saturday, according to the Hijri calendar. The night or the evening of Saturday, the 27th of Muharram, the year 1443, after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. As the title of the signs of the hour, the warning signs, as we mentioned, is the indharat, the warning signs. And technically, that's what they are. All the signs of the day of resurrection that we see are warning signs. The signs of a warning. Warning for what? The warning signs, and a lot of people will think, what is some people you'll find that you get the feeling that it's like entertainment. It's not entertainment. And certain people, you'll find that they take it as an affair, as if that now, what are we going to do? Where people are rendered in a state of hopelessness and despair. These are affairs that are incorrect. They're not in order to make us in a point where we're all startled, to the point where we're rendered in a state of despair and hopelessness. And you'll find that a lot of people have been in this state, or they've been put in this state where you'll find that it's as if they've given up. The affairs of the signs of the hour, ya ma'ashar ikhwa, number one, they're warning signs. They're signs of warnings. All we see taking place, from everything you see of catastrophes, and we don't call them natural disasters where we ascribe them to Mother Nature. That's against our belief. No, we believe that all these affairs that are taking place around us because people aren't living right. That's what we believe. People are not living right. They're not living their lives correctly. And that Allah Ta'ala starts these signs in order to, is as if you'll find that what one would attain of understanding is to wake up. Get yourself together. Adhere to the truth, and wherever you're coming up short, rectify it immediately. That's why we're supposed to understand these trials and tribulations. So they're not just signs that we hear it and we're like astonished by it. No one that's upon Salafiyah and have studied Aqidah is astonished by these affairs, because we firmly believe in what Allah's messenger is going to come true. So we have no doubt. So what we're seeing now, we're not surprised by it. This is what Allah's messenger has said. So we have no reluctancy in these affairs at all. So we're not surprised. Certain people, you hear them say, I'm surprised. What are you surprised about? People are openly sinning. What's the surprise? Now, oh wow, we have this pandemic. Then next thing there's earthquake. What are you surprised about? What's there to be surprised about? What? So what Allah, His messenger, had promised has come to light because of the disobedience of the creation, and that people are not living right. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends these warning signs to the creation. Warning. Get yourself together. Reevaluate your situation. Where you're not living right, rectify it immediately. Any responsibilities you're coming up short in regards to the rights of your Lord, number one, rectify it immediately. Then rectify who you oppress with the creation. Rectify it immediately. Who you have oppressed, rectify it. So Allah Ta'ala makes these signs. And like we talked about, we said that the title of the lecture, everyone, was what? Indharat. Warning signs. Where the signs of the day of resurrection will manifest. And what is the solution? So now, as we will speak about these matters over the next couple of days, inshallah, we'll speak about some of the signs, and I'm going to say it generally before we start talking about it in detail. That these matters that we're going to mention, number one, from the aspect, or they call min janib al-aqidah, or min al-janib al-aqadi, from the aspect of our belief, that when you hear them, it's going to increase you in your iman, your belief in Allah and His Messenger, where it puts more yaqeen, more and more surety that what you're upon is the truth. That's how our minds should be ready when we hear this information. Because what I'm going to say, everybody's going to be able to relate and correlate it to what's taking place in front of us right now. Even though I'm going to mention it generally. And that should put yaqeen, that what we're upon, inshallah, is correct. And it will increase us and augment us in what? Stability. Stability and surety. That what Allah and His Messenger has spoken the truth, and that what is incumbent upon us as the solutions. Because that's not what we want to mention these narrations to be astonished by it. Like we said, we mention these narrations to remind ourselves. That's how we should look at it. Nobody who's Salafi in this room should be surprised by what we see taking place in front of us. No one. Those who have learned and those who have been in this religion and those who truly study and have taken time out of their time in order to educate themselves in these affairs, like we said, they're not astonished nor are they bewildered of what's taking place around them at this moment in time. They're not. However, we take it as an exhortation that we have to now reevaluate our situation, start living right, and prepare for what's coming. And what's the solutions? Those are the things we also want to mention in these lectures. So we don't want to mention them and then say, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? No, we also give the solutions based upon what Allah and His Messenger have mentioned. Because you'll find our complete religion, alhamdulillah, mentions these affairs, and at the same time the Messenger of Allah gave us the best solutions to how to be prepared and to how to protect yourself and fortify yourself and not to be from those who will be destroyed. And that the affairs that you see taking place around you, how to protect yourself, how to survive through the waves and the dark waves of fitan. Because that's how, or the days we live in is like that. As the Messenger of Allah gave examples in the narrations that we'll bring. The different types of trials of fitan are like, it's like darkness. And that the people have to be able to maneuver through those high waves of darkness so they won't drown in the currents and the floods. And the currents and the floods and the darkness represents the different types of falsehood and how people are being swept away day by day from brothers and sisters who were with us one day, and then they were swept away from those currents. Even they were engrossed now in disbelief, or they were swept away from the waves of innovations and desires. So those affairs of how to maneuver through those currents and those waves when they become violent, or when they now become high, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ gave us all the solutions. The Prophet ﷺ gave us all the solutions. Be patient. So these are the affairs that we want to mention, everyone, before we actually start to now mention what we wanted to mention. The Messenger of Allah, no doubt, talked about the signs of the hour, and that certain affairs will lead up to others. Certain affairs will start, and then it will start with minor, then it will all go to major. Starting with those different categories, and I'm sure that everyone, or some of us, are familiar with. Al-alamat al-sughra, that the signs of the hour, that they break down into two categories, I'm sure that some of us is familiar with. Number one is the minor signs. The minor signs of the day of resurrection, where a lot of them have now manifest themselves. They're clear as the sun in the sky. And we know that there will be al-alamat al-kubra. There will be major signs of the day of resurrection. Before we start to talk about some of them generally, that I wanted to start bringing a list. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam talked about the fitan of his ummah, of the different types. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Abu Suhaila or Amr Quinn, Hafidhullah, bring some of the narration in that regard. It gave some, or it shed some light of what we're speaking about. The narrations you'll find that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam had talked about fitan, that the afiyah, that the affair of uprightness and solidarity, true unification, that they came in the first part of this nation, meaning at the time of the Messenger of Allah and those 3 generations who the Messenger of Allah praised. And the Messenger of Allah said that in the hadith for a reason. He said, "Allah wa inna afiyata hadi al-ummah wa fi riwaya ju'ilat afiyatuha fi awwaliha wa sayusibu akhiraha bala'un wa umurun tunkirunaha wa fi riwaya satunkiru wa sayusibu akhiraha bala'un wa fitan." There's another narration. He said that the solidarity and that protection and the best state of the affairs of this religion, from this nation, it was made in its first. Why did the Messenger of Allah mention that? For a reason. Saying that if you want to stay in a state that is sound, then you have to refer your bears to how they were. Because your prosperity goes back to them. Because the Messenger of Allah praised and said that their affairs were what? At the most sound and perfect of what is what? In regards to human beings. In regards to human beings and uprightness in the religion, goes back to them. So the only way that this ummah will be rectified is to return back to their affair and to their state and how they were and to their belief and to their methodology. Because when the fitna comes, you have to revert back to that state or else you will be destroyed. You will be now enveloped and you will be swept away with the currents of, or the violent currents of deviation or disbelief or those means of destruction. So the Messenger of Allah said that in the first part of the hadith to let you know that this is the solution first. Number 1. جُعِلَتْ هَذِي الْأُمَّةِ وَعَافِيَتْ هَذِي الْأُمَّةِ فِي أَوَّلِهَا. However, it will be afflicted. The last part of this ummah by trials and tribulations. And to the point where, as we know that the Messenger of Allah said the hadith, مُخَرَّجٌ فِي صَحِيحِ Muslim, the Kitab al-Fitan, where the Messenger of Allah said that in the narration, when they come, it says, يُرَقِّقُ بَعْضُهَا بَعْضًا. He said that the fitna, when it comes, it will come in a manner that is very, very what? It's considered very tremendous with the believer. He said until the point, like he said, the mu'min would say, this is the means of my destruction. Then it will go away. Then the one is to follow will be worse. This is exactly what's taking place today. From all of us who entered Salafiyah from the time they've been Muslim, every year, periodically, all of us have been seeing, rather not periodically, but all the time, each year, that we see that it's as if the magnitude of fitna is increasing and increasing and increasing, and it's getting up, going up. The doors, and many doors of different types, are being opened. In comparison to what left off in the previous year, to what's to follow with the upcoming year, you'll compare it as if the one that had already passed and had departed, that was nothing compared to what we're facing now or to what's coming. That's the message of Allah that He gave, the method or the example, the example of fitna and trials and tribulations like this. That it will continue and it will go and it will increase. And the one that departed in comparison to what's coming, it's as if there's no comparison. So these are the affairs you'll find, as we said, in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ talked about these authentic narrations. However, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ did not leave us without solutions. All these narrations that if you study, the number one you'll find that it says in the first part that the solidarity or the sound state of affairs or the people who are upon that uprightness, they were the companions. That was the first part of this ummah. So those matters you have to go back to, which is pertaining to how their state was. So that's the number one, as we said. Number two, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said in that same narration another solution, where he said, "Man ahabba an yuzahzaha 'anil nar." So it's another solution. وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةَ فَلْتَأْتِهِ مَنِيَّتُهُ وَهُوَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَلْيَأْتِ إِلَى النَّاسِ مَا يُحِبَّ يُؤْتَى إِلَيْهِ. So the Messenger of Allah, after he said there will be affairs in which you'll find severe You will be plagued with fitan from every aspect, from any side, from every side. Then the Messenger of Allah in the midst of all that gave the solution. One of them, as we mentioned, like what we just mentioned now. He said, whoever wants to be put far away from hell, whoever wants to be put far away from hell, and he wants to be entered into paradise. So the Messenger of Allah is saying, you want to succeed, you want to maneuver through those waves of those violent currents, or that darkness. If you want to now maneuver through that and survive and attain prosperity, and you want to survive, because in this dunya it's like survival. Surviving through all the different types of trials and tests that one has to go through. And it is a means of survival. The Messenger of Allah said this solution, what did he say? Whoever wants to be put far away from hell, enter in paradise, let death come to one of you and he's believing in Allah on the last day. So that's another solution. Then the Messenger of Allah said, now, in regards to the people, and when you see them now becoming corrupt, and that a lot of people become inclined towards wickedness and evil, hypocrisy, being satanic, and being like a savage or worse, all the people now are becoming corrupt in so many ways. The Prophet ﷺ gave solutions to that when he went on to say, he says, مَنْ أَرَادَ يُزَحْزَحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَيُدْخَلَ الْجَنَّةَ فَلْتَأْتِهِ مَنِيَّتُهُ وَهُوَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَلْيَأْتِي إِلَى النَّاسِ مَنْ يُحِبْ أَنْ يُؤْتَى إِلَيْهِ. Let him now come to the people and deal with the people how he will want to be dealt with. Meaning you'll find in all these narrations that we're mentioning, what we will mention throughout the Dawah, that the Messenger of Allah said, even though people are upon corruption, you have to adhere to what's correct, no matter what the circumstances. That's your means of salvation. No matter how much you see so-and-so is doing this, so-and-so is doing that, this person is doing this person is doing that. Brothers, wallahi and sisters, we are in the days and times you have to be strong-minded these days. You cannot be weak-minded. Weak-minded will get you killed. Weak-minded will get you in the fall of kufr. Weak-minded will allow you will fall in hell. You have to be strong-minded and you have to be firm upon what you're upon. And you have to make dua to Allah, and we're going to get the other solutions in a minute. There's no time to be weak-minded these days. You have to be strong-minded. You cannot be like what everybody's doing, because the Messenger of Allah said these days and times, majority of the people are going to the hellfire. And they're now embarked upon those different types of ways that's going to land them inside of it. You see it right in front of you. So the Messenger of Allah said, no matter what the circumstance, what it is, adhere to what is correct. They're corrupt, you stick to uprightness. They left off the salat, you continue to pray. They're going to go journey into the world in the realm of bid'ah, you stay firm upon the sunnah. Well, everyone is doing it, so what? Everyone's talking bad about Sheikh Rabi', you don't talk bad about Sheikh Rabi'. Everyone's talking bad about Fawzan, you don't talk bad about Fawzan. No matter who's doing it. Because there's a lot of people that have fallen into this left and right. Everybody's saying it. Then the Messenger of Allah said, these will be the times where people will be inclined towards wickedness and evil. These are the days. How many days? I see every day where I'm saying every single day, I'm saying on my tongue, look at this insanity. Look at this insane individual. Every day I say it. Insane, insanity. Losing their minds out here. May Allah Ta'ala protect our minds. So the Messenger of Allah said in these narrations, what did he say, everyone? وَلْيَأْتِي إِلَى النَّاسِ مَنْ يُحِبَّ يُؤْتَى إِلَيْهِ. Then he said another solution, which has now plagued the other countries. And it says in the last narration, what does it say, everyone? وَمَنْ بَايَعَ إِمَامًا فَأَعْطَاهُ صَفْقَةَ يَدِهِ وَثَمْرَةَ فُؤَادِهِ فَلْيُطِعْهُ إِنِ اسْتَطَاعَ فإن جاء الآخر ينازع فاضربوا عنق الآخر. Then he gave another solution, talking about the rulers. How many shayateen have inspired Muslims to always talking about rulership? You see it, more fitna. We need to overthrow the rulers and all that other nonsense, right? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu gave the solution to that. Whoever gives the pledge of allegiance to the ruler, that land, and he's gave him safqata yadi, he's placed his hand in obedience to him, and he has given the fruit of his heart, let him obey him as much as he's able. Someone now wants to come in order to remove that obedience from the ruler, you'll find that he said, strike his neck. Why did the Messenger of Allah say that? Because the individual that now ruins the unity of the people of a particular country, where there would be millions of people whose bloodshed and the state of their solidarity is ruined, where now it's a bunch of corruption and people's lives are lost because they want leadership and they want to overthrow the ruler, the Messenger of Allah was severe against them to maintain the lives and the blood and the property of the people. So these are solutions that the Messenger of Allah gave on top of what we are facing today. You'll find there are other solutions. But the Messenger of Allah talked about the doors of fitna. I don't even have to speak too much about it because it's a lot. We know the narrations of Hudayfa, where he's the one that gave the majority of narrations about the great trials that will come and everyone will be tested with. For example, even Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, did he mention the narration? He said, لا يوشكن أن يصب عليكم الشر من السماء حتى يبلغ الفيافي. قال وقيل وما الفيافي يا أبا عبد الله قال الأرض القفر. He said, most definitely it's about to be poured upon you evil from the heavens until it will reach the deserts. Until it will reach the deserts. And they asked, what is al-fayafi or al-fayfa? He said, al-ard al-qafr, that barren land or that land of the desert. So the Messenger of Allah had talked about all these matters what we're facing today. But like we talked about, we want to remind ourselves of what's the solution. What's going to now allow us to attain prosperity and success to be maneuvered through all these matters. Even though we affirm that they're there. You'll find, for example, even Ali ibn Abi Talib, he mentioned this, of what we're facing today. He said, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, which has also been collected in Abdur Razaaq in his Musannaf, where he said, وَضَعَ اللَّهُ فِي هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ خَمْسَ فِتَنٍ فِتْنَةٌ عَامَّةٌ ثُمَّ فِتْنَةٌ خَاصَّةٌ ثُمَّ فِتْنَةٌ عَامَّةٌ ثُمَّ فِتْنَةٌ خَاصَّةٌ ثم فتنة تموج كموج البحر يصبح الناس فيها كالبهائم. Ali ibn Abi Talib, that he said in the narration, he said that Allah has put in this ummah khamsa fitan, 5 types of trials and tribulations. He said general tribulations. General tribulations mean that everyone is being tested with it. The earthquakes, the disasters, the catastrophes, the pandemics, the epidemics, the bad weather, the earthquakes, the fires, the killing, the murder, the bloodshed, that's general. Everyone's being tested with it. Then he said, ثُمَّ فِتْنَةٌ خَاصَّةٌ. Then specific fitan with yourselves. Fitan of ailments, health issues, problems in your private life. Fitan that's pertaining to yourself specifically. Everyone is going through it. He said, fitnatun amma wa fitnatun khassa. Then he said, fitnatun amma wa fitnatun khassa. Then he said, thumma fitna tamuj kamuj al-bahr. He said, then it will be like the seas, it'll become like the sea or the waves of the sea, in which the people by it will become like baha'im, like animals and savages. This is what you see taking place today. People are like Baha'im, they're like animals. They don't know where to go. They don't know what direction to go in. Other than they just eat and go to the bathroom, but not knowing their purpose. Losing their minds. Don't know what direction to go in their lives. So he says, وَذَهَابَ الْعَقْلِ وَالدِّينِ وَأَمَّا تَعَاظُمُ الْفِتَنِ حَتَّى تَسُوقَ النَّاسِ إِلَىٰ أَعْظَمِ الْفِتَنِ الدَّجَّالِ فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وما صنعت فتنة منذ أن كانت الدنيا صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا فتنة الدجال. He says you'll find that the removal of people's minds, insanity in their religion, until it becomes so great, until it will drive the people to the greatest of all trials and tribulations, which is the Antichrist. And that's what the stage is being set right now. Everything is being set towards that affair. It's being pushed towards it. It's setting up the stage of the Dajjal, like I said before Maghrib. As I even remember, like I said, I was talking to our Sheikh and my good friend, Sheikh Arafat al-Muhammadi Hafidhullah, where he mentioned it, said, Abdur Razaaq, everything is being set up right now towards the releasement of the Dajjal. Everything. Everything is pointing towards that direction. Everything is being set up to lead up to that. That's what's taking place right now. He said there has not been a fitna since, where it says in the narration, so correct Imam Ahmad, وصححه الإمام الألباني in the Sahiha. He said there has not been a trial or tribulation that has been taken, or that has been done, or suni'at, that has taken place, except since the dunya, he said, was small, except, or nor was it big, meaning as far as in its magnitude of those different trials, except that the greatest and the head of all of them is the trial of the Dajjal, of the Antichrist that's coming. We have narrations in which the Messenger of Allah even gave us solutions on how to protect us from him. So the Messenger of Allah did not give us warnings, and then after that he gave us narrations of how to protect yourself, and what to do, and what to do if he does come out, and what not to do, and if you were caught by him, what to do, and how to conduct yourself. The Messenger of Allah did not leave anything. He said he gave us directions of how to protect yourself and how to survive. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Then you'll find the narrations where it's speaking about, for example, where fitan comes from and where it will emanate from. You'll find in which the direction in which it comes, خروج الفتن وشدتها فأكثر الفتن تكون من جهة المشرق. Just write the mashriq. On my side is the east. From the aspect of where it says the direction of how great these different trials and tribulations will come, the Messenger of Allah specified a specific area. What is it, everyone? He said, Majihat al-Mashriq. He said, from the eastern side, the direction to the east. And they was wondering why. Once I mention this, everyone is going to be astonished. Not astonished, but very informed by what the Messenger of Allah said, and that it will put yaqeen, building more surety upon more surety. And which I'm going to mention why. He says on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar, قال رأيت رسول الله. Then I'm going to now bring everything together after I mention this narration. And everyone would say, oh, okay, now it makes sense. On the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar, رضي الله عنه, he said, رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يشير إلى المشرق فقال ها إن الفتنة ها هنا إن الفتنة ها هنا من حيث يطلع قرن الشيطان. So he said that the Messenger of Allah والسلام, that he said from the direction of which fitan trials will emanate from, and the severity of it, that the majority of it will be from the direction of the east, where it said that the Messenger of Allah pointed towards that direction. He said, here's where trials and tribulations, here's where trials and tribulations are. He said, it's where the horn of shaitan rises. It's where the horn of shaitan rises. I'm going to get to the reason why in a minute. Also, we know the narration with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the authority Salim ibn Abdullah ibn Umar رضي الله عنه قال يا أهل العراق ما أسألكم عن الصغيرة وأركبكم للكبيرة. سمعت أبي عبد الله بن عمر يقول سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الفتنة تجيء من ها هنا وأومأ بيده نحو المشرق من حيث يطلع قرنا الشيطان وأنتم يضرب بعضكم رقاب بعض. So it says in the narration On the authority of Salim ibn Abdullah ibn Umar, they said, O people of Iraq, I'm not asking you about the small fitan, nor am I now going to tell that I'm now going to apply to you and make it applicable to you of the major ones. Now this is what he goes on to say. I heard my father Abdullah ibn Umar said that I heard that the Messenger of Allah say, verily trials and tribulations will come from there. And he said the Messenger of Allah put his hand towards that direction. He said that is where the two horns of shaitan rises. He said in that case, you will start killing one another. He says you will start striking the necks of one another, and he pointed towards that direction. We know the narrations where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ also said on authority Ibn Abbas, قال دعا نبي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام فقال اللهم بارك لنا في صاعنا ومدنا وبارك لنا في مكتنا ومدينتنا وبارك لنا في شامنا ويمننا. فقال رجل من القوم يا نبي الله وعراقنا إن بها فقال إن بها قرن الشيطان وتهيج الفتن وإن الجفاء بالمشرق. He says that the Messenger of Allah made this dua. Oh Allah, bless us in our sa' and our mud. Bless us in Mecca and Medina and Sham. And Sham. Where's Sham located? Everyone should know, inshallah. The area where? Quds, Palestine, Jordan, Syria. All that's considered Sham. The Prophet ﷺ talked about how that land, made dua for that land. Why? Because on the last days of this earth, the people will make hijrah to there. Because that's where the day of resurrection will start, will commence, and the people are all there at that particular time. Right before the major earthquakes takes place. The major ones, because we'll talk about that in the Dora. There's going to be 3 major earthquakes. Not these little people would say these little small earthquakes, and I call them small. Small earthquakes in California, all those are small in comparison will be right before the day of resurrection. There's going to be some major earthquakes where it'll take out lands. I'm talking about continents, lands. Huge. Yes. Huge. Until the day of resurrection, when it starts and when it commences, the people will be in Sham. And they'll push them to where the people will be, and that's when the day of resurrection will commence. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Oh Allah, bless us in Mecca, and Medina, and Sham, and Yemen. Then a man said, what about Iraq, O Messenger of Allah? He said, verily, there is the horn of shaitan, and the incitement of trials and tribulations. He says, and unfriendliness is in the east. Al-Jafa. It's in the east. Listen to Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar that he mentioned in this regard. He said, وَأَوْلُ فِتَدْ كَانَ مِنْ قِبَلِ الْمَشْرِقِ فَكَانَ ذَلِكَ سَبَبًا لِلْفُرْقَةِ بَيْنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وذلك مما يحبه الشيطان ويفرح به وكذلك البدع نشأت من تلك الجهة. وقال الخطابي نجد من جهة المشرق ليس النجد في السعودية ولكن النجد في العراق من جهة المشرق ومن كان بالمدينة كان نجده بادية العراق ونواحيها وهي مشرق أهل المدينة وأصل النجد ما ارتفع من الأرض. Where you find Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar that he mentioned, it says, he said the first of trials and tribulations when they emanate from the east. He said, why? Why did the Messenger of Allah specify the east? He said because that was the reason of why the Muslims started to become divided. That is because that is what shaitan loves and what he rejoices over. He said why? Because he said likewise innovations develop in that direction. Al-Khattabi said Najd, where it was mentioned Najd, it's not talking about the place that's known as Saudi Arabia today. What he meant by Najd here, what was intended by Najd, was the Iraq towards the direction of the east. He said because anybody who was in Medina at that time, Najd to them was like behind the Iraq. The Iraq was what was behind it towards the eastern side of what we know, which is Iran. And all those places in Iran, it was beyond them. He says in this direction, in which he said, which if you were in Medina, that would be a direction. Now I'm going to get into some realities of what's taking place. The Messenger of Allah indeed spoke the truth. Sadaqallah rahimahullah. Talk about Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar. He said from Iraq, notice it says, انطلق الثوار الذين خرجوا على عثمان. He said because of Iraq, those who incited those revolts against Uthman bin Affan came from there. And we know that the Messenger of Allah said, once Uthman was killed and his blood was shed, it will continue my ummah to the day of resurrection. Those who now incited violence in order to kill and shed the blood of Uthman came from that direction, came from Iraq. He said likewise, the emergence of the Khawarij came from that direction. The emergence of the Shia and the Rawafid came from that direction. Also from the Batiniyah, the different devious sects, the Qadiriyah and the Jahmiyah came from that direction. He said, فَأَكْثُرُ مَقَالَاتِ الضَّلَاءِ وَالْكُفْرِ كَانَتْ مِنْ جِهَةِ الْمَشْرِقِ. The majority of the statements of misguidance and the cause of the shaitan and the hellfire and disbelief came from that direction. And because of that, wars broke out between, he said, وَقَعَتِ الْحُرُوبِ بَيْنَ الصَّحَابَةِ. Wars broke out between the Sahaba. To the point, وَبِهَا قُتِلَ السِّبْتِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ الْحُسَيْنِ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ. And in that particular time, in that area, the grandson of the Messenger of Allah from that area was also killed. Hussein was killed, radiallahu anhu. Then the great fitna that taken place with khuruj of the Khawarij and the fitna Ibn Ash'af. If you go back to now, Bidayah wa Nihaya of the fitna of Ibn Ash'af, which broke out between him and also Hajjaj. Where Ibn Ash'af and the fitna of Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubayd, who the Messenger of Allah described him as being the liar that will appear in this ummah, Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubayd. And the one who was also the Mubir, who the Messenger of Allah said, the one who will love bloodshed, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, also is from that direction. All these people is towards that direction, in which bloodshed taking place and the ulama were killed. Now listen to where it goes on to. Now listen to this. ما لم يجري في غيرها من الجهات وأما ظهور التتار إلا من المشرق وقد حصل على أيديه من الشر والدمار ما يعجز عنه الوصف ويحتار عنده العقل ولا يزال الشرق مرتكزا للبرع ومهدا للقلاقل ولن يخرج الدجال ويأجوج مأجوج إلا من جهته. Then it goes on to say, he says, how much of what has taken place through history of destruction and decimation. He says it to the point where the description of it is undescribable, of how many people were murdered and killed, and how much violence and corruption and bloodshed had taken place, until it bewildered the minds of the people. And he said, you'll find that this here in this area, or that area in the east, he says it's a concentrated place where it emanates from it innovations. He says, and it's a method, it's a base for disturbances of the people. Now listen to this part. The Antichrist will not come out, nor Ya'juj or Ma'juj, except from that direction. The Antichrist and Ya'juj or Ma'juj will not come out or emerge except from that direction. So the greatest of all evils that will plague humankind, everybody in the dunya, will be affected by the Dajjal and to the point where people lose their minds. And which today, as we know, and I'm sure that my brother Umar Sheikh Umar Quinn is going to speak about. Right now, we face the fitna of the Dajjal, right now. Person will say, how? Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Sa'di, rahimahullah, he has a book talking about the Dajjal. And if I'm not mistaken, it was translated by Sheikh Abu Musa Rahabat, translated if I'm not mistaken. He translated the book. If you look in there, it's a little risala. And he was mentioning about how Shaykh al-Islam says that the fitna of the Dajjal breaks down into two types. He says general and specific. He said that the fitna of the Dajjal that's general He says all the types of misguidance. From the callers of misguidance where they have decorated speech. Decorated speech or misguidance for those who have been misguided by those callers who have decorated, embellished speech. Very eloquent in their words. Very decorated to the point where their speech is like magic. That it grabs you, makes you gravitated and engaged to the point where you're influenced by it until you fall into misguidance and disbelief. That's exactly the fitna of the Dajjal when he's released. That's exactly what he's going to do to the people. That's one of the things that he will have. He will be given decorated speech. He will be given eloquent speech. So the callers of misguidance and the callers of evil and the callers to the dwellers of hell, except that they were given that tool in order to misguide the people by it. Even the people of disbelief, from those Christians and those preachers in the churches, the same thing. They're given decorated speech to allure you. Make it decorated so it's like magic. Because we know the narration where the Messenger of Allah had mentioned and said, whatever everyone, Inna la fil bayani sihra. Verily in clarification, meaning in speech, it can be magic. Meaning that people can decorate your speech to the point, have you now engaged to the point where they can set you up. Where they can now start putting their pollutants in your heart. And you not realize it. Because their speech is so decorated. But you're not looking past what it is that it is of misguidance. Why? Because you're so deluded in calling what he's saying. Because of what he's using is so what? It's so alluring. It's so fair seeming. It's so magical. Man, he has a great speech. Wow. The Messenger of Allah said that will be the tool that the Dajjal will be given when he comes out. And he said that every call of misguidance and everyone that's misguided by these people, you've been subjected to the fitna of the Dajjal, the general fitna. Because every call of misguidance is like the fitna of the Dajjal in that aspect of the decorated speech to call the people to the hellfire. Is it clear? And that's what the people are experiencing today, right now. All you have to do now is click it on your button, YouTube. That's all you have to do. Click on a YouTube. Pick a channel. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu bih. Oh man, mashallah, his Arabic is so nice. Mashallah, his English and his vocabulary is just subhanallah al-azim. I've never heard an individual. There you go. Done. Got you. That fast. The Prophet ﷺ said in these affairs that the Dajjal, he will be released. And yet Juj or Ma'juj is set from the distance of the east. He said, now listen to this part. The major battle of the Euphrates, the river of the Euphrates. That river that flows, if it's not mistaken, is it through Syria all the way up to Iraq, in that area. The Euphrates River. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said on the close to the hour that it will dry up. And there will be a mountain of gold that will also emanate. And that the people, that the Muslims will start to fight over it. From every 199 people will be killed. He said, now how am I going to tie this in? He said, that also is from that direction. The fitna of the Mongolians, of Genghis Khan emanated from where? That direction. All the atrocities, all the major decimation of the Ummah had taken place in history, except that it started from that direction. From the Mongolians of Tatar east. However, just to bring the glad tidings, so no one will say, Brother Abdur Razaaq, the greatest of the ulama came from that side too. The greatest of this deen came from that distance. So however, the ulama did say, they said, however, what we want to say is that just because the Messenger of Allah mentioned that does not mean that the best of the people can emanate from those evil places or from that evil direction, excuse me. He said, why? Because the greatest of this ummah came from that direction of those who are and those who have serviced our religion. From them, Imam al-Bukhari. Imam Bukhari came from that direction, came from Bukhara. We have a brother right here in front of me who's from that country, which is currently today Uzbekistan. That's where Bukhara is, which is who authored the greatest book after the book of Allah Ta'ala, which protected the prophetic narrations of our Prophet ﷺ, which is Sahih al-Bukhari, where the Imam al-Bukhari came from that area from the east, which currently today is Uz, Pakistan. And Imam Tirmidhi also came from that place, from that area, in that direction. So just because we say that area is what? Is evil, that direction is evil, does not mean that the greatest of people who fear Allah Ta'ala, who could be the greatest of the ulama, also can come from that direction. Is it clear, everyone? So these are the affairs of what we're speaking about. We wanted to inaugurate this lecture with. I wanted to talk about something else, but the time does not permit. So those are the solutions that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ gave us. From them is ta'awudh billah minha. Another solution the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said is to seek refuge in Allah from these trials and tribulations, in which we've been commanded in every prayer. Every prayer the Messenger of Allah ﷺ commanded us to seek refuge in Allah from fitan. And also narration with the Messenger of Allah on Zayd ibn Thabit, that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ قال تعوذوا بالله من الفتن ما ظهر منها وما بطن قلنا نعوذ بالله من الفتن ما ظهر منها وما بطن. When Zayd ibn Thabit, he said, seek refuge in Allah from fitan, what is apparent from it and secret. And they said, نعوذ بالله من الفتن, what is apparent and what is secret. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ gave us solutions to how to protect ourselves, and we're going to get into more. What the Messenger of Allah ﷺ also mentioned and said, when he was talking about the affairs that's pertaining to where it becomes severe against the people. There was an individual who came and he said that he wished that fitan would afflict him. However, this is what he meant by it. He said, I wish that fitan would take place so I can attain the reward of the Sahaba. Right? Now listen. He said, I want that fitan similar to them so I can attain a level of the companions of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, I want that reward. So I would like to be tested what they were tested with so I can reach that status. When Miqdad ibn Aswad, he said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu say, Inna Sa'id laman junnib al-fitan. Verily the one indeed that's successful is the one that has been protected from trials and tribulations. Verily the one who's successful is the one who's been protected from trials and tribulations. The Messenger of Allah said 3. He said, وَلِمَنْ أُبْتُلِي فَصَبْرْ فَوَاهًا. And for the person who remains firm, even though he's tested, remains patient, فَوَاهًا. He said that that individual indeed will be successful. Do not worry. So don't wish for fitan. Don't want that. But however, the one who truly indeed is successful, he is the one that is what? Who Allah has protected. No matter the case, indeed he will attain success. So these are the affairs that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ mentioned. And another one you'll find that it says in a narration of Jubayd ibn Nufayr and Miqdad ibn Aswad. And he also mentioned a narration where he said, well, this is basically the same one, that the individual said that he wanted fitan so he can attain the level of Sahaba. However, it has something extra in it. It said that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ mentioned and said, after the virtue of the one who's been protected by Allah from not falling to these matters, he said at the end, now listen to this. وَيْمَ اللَّهَ لَا أَشْهَدِ أَحَدٍ أَنَّهُ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ حَتَّى أَعْلَمَ مَا يَمُوتَ عَلَيْهِ بعد حديث سمعته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سمعته يقول لقلب ابن آدم الشد انقلاب من القدر إذا غليت. Allahu Akbar. He said after the Messenger of Allah said that statement, verily the one who's truly prominent is the one who Allah protects from fitan. He repeated it 3 times. And for the one who's tested, he remains patient. He says, Waym Allah, I will not testify for anyone that from people of paradise, he says, until I know what he dies upon. After the hadith, I heard from the Messenger of Allah. He said, the Messenger of Allah said, most definitely the heart of the children of Adam, he said, it flips so severely, more than a pot when it reaches its boiling point. Allahu Akbar. May Allah keep our hearts firm. The Messenger of Allah also talked about another affair, that during times of trials and tribulation, he said, أَنَّ الْعِبَادَ فِي الْهَرَجِ كَالْهِجْرَةِ إِلَيْهِ. Worshipping Allah during those times where they become hard and difficult, worshipping Allah and devoting to it is like making hijrah to me. It's like making, it's like migrating to me. So worship also is a means for survival during these times. Worship. So a person wants a solution, that's it. Worshiping Allah Ta'ala in these days will be a means of stability. And keeping your mind clear and keeping your your sights clear and your insight clear. It's worship. That's also how one attains stability and remains firm. Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar that he mentioned it said, he said, في الحديث الندب إلى الدعاء والتضرع عند نزول الفتنة. He said, during the time, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, he said in the hadith, he said how it's highly, highly recommended during the times of trials of dua and subservience and humbling oneself when fitna and trials come. لا سيما في الليل لرجاء وقت الإجابة لتكشف أو لتكشف عفوا أو يسلم الداعي ومن دعا له وبالله التوفيق. He said, during when they come now, when people have been afflicted and it's left and right, he said, especially at night, for the hope that Allah will respond or will answer it, in order for it to either be removed or that a person is saved. لِتُكْشَفْ or لِيَسْلَمْ. That Allah will remove it or He will save you. وَمَنْ دَعَى لَهُ. For the one who invokes Him. May Allah give us tawfiq. So those are the affairs I wanted to start with. There's other narrations that we don't have time for. However, we're going to end it off by this. The things that we wanted to speak about, and which we'll talk about in detail, which is going to come inshallah. The narrations of what we see, all is coming true. Well, we see it now, actualizing. For example, the message of Allah. From the signs of the hour is that He was sent as the last final prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, اقتربت الساعة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed that, 1,000, how many years, how many years, everyone? 1,443 years ago, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, the hour has drawn close. اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. The day of resurrection, the hour is about to be established. The message of Allah sallallahu Him being the last messenger to all humanity is a sign. The moon splitting is a sign. The death of the message of Allah is a sign. The message of Allah has said about the conquest of Palestine happened already. Everyone knows about the Ta'un. That plague that had broke out, it was called Amawas, which killed a lot of people. And it's no comparison to what is now taking place in the pandemic. The Ta'un, the Amawas, that's no comparison to what we've seen today. That took people out in immediately, as soon as they were afflicted with it. And some of the Sahaba died in the Ta'un, or the plague of the Amawas. Those were the signs that also was predicted, that was mentioned, I don't say predicted, but it was mentioned by the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. I want to skip down into what was relative to what's taking place today, and which we'll speak about, inshallah, during these days. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had talked about the signs of the hour, for example, that there will be people that will claim prophethood, and they'll lie upon the message of Allah. We see that today. Absolutely, we see that today. From them is the deviant sect, Ahmed Ghulam al-Qadiani. He says he's a prophet and a messenger. Liar. He was the false prophet that was sent by the UK, by the United Kingdom. Liar. Lie upon Allah and His messenger. And how many people are following them? Thousands. Call to the hellfire. And thousands of Muslims are following them. Following that call, So that's from the signs we see today. Liars of those who claim prophethood. Also, from the days of resurrection we see today, from its alamat, people will start to only greet who they know. They'll only give salams to people who they know. That's it. And we'll talk about the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, where he was sitting in a group, and the man only gave him salams. And he said such and such, "Oh, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud." And the Prophet Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, "Sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." He said, the messenger, he said, Allah, his messenger spoke the truth. Or the messenger of Allah spoke the truth. He said, there will come a day that people only just want to give salams to people who they know. That's it. And that was during the time of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He said, "At-tahiyya ala al-ma'rifah." Greetings only to people who I know. That's it. They're the only ones that deserve my attention. Right? Also, from them is the signs where children, illegitimate children born out of wedlock, will be widespread. Don't we see that today? أولاد غير شرعيين. The widespread of children born, or they say illegitimate children, meaning children that were born out of wedlock. From the signs of the hour. It's in front of us. How the concubine, female concubine, will give birth to her own master. And there's different meanings for that narration. Some of them say that the meaning of it is the severe disrespect of parents. To the point where the child will become like the parent. And the parent will become like the child. Where the child is actually dictating and actually what? Running the affairs of the parent in the household. We see this today. How many parents we see trying to act like their children, dress like their children? It's as if they missed something in their life, so they want to revert back to being like a child. My child, me and my fun and my friend. Your friend? It's your child. You're supposed to be the role model, set an example for him or her. Not for you to follow behind what they're doing. You see this today. Disrespect of parents. Also, the Messenger of Allah said another meaning of hadith that it says that the female concubine will have a child. Then they're separated. They'll be separated because it's walad. It's not permissible to separate a walad. Meaning a child that was born, even though she's a concubine, she had the child, the ahkam pertaining to the concubine, if she has the child, they can never be sold or separated at all. It's not permissible. However, it will show how the inclination of evil, people will oppress. The concubine shall have a child, they'll be separated. They say that the child will come back not realizing that that's his mother and he will purchase her. To this point now, he became a level above her. Why? Because he set her free. That's the reason why it says in the narration that the female concubine will give birth to her own master. That's one of the narrations. At any rate, we'll get to that later. As the Messenger of Allah said, there are also, for the signs of the hour, a tatawuf al-bunyan. People start to compete in building lofty structures or lofty buildings. We see that in front of our eyes. Everyone knows the tallest building in the dunya right now is where? It's in, where everyone? In the Emirates. All you have to do is Google it. You can Google it if you want. It says the highest, tallest building. Ask Siri. Say to Siri or whoever it is. Where is the tallest building in the dunya? Everyone plug it in, those who listen online. It's going to come up, Burj Al Khalifa. The Tower of Khalifa, which is located now in the Emirates. It's the highest, tallest building in the world. What the Prophet ﷺ said came to light. He said because at one time, not too long ago, they were poor. They were Bedouin, desert Arabs. Allah allowed to open the dunya for them, to now they build in tall, lofty buildings. Sadaqa Rasulullah ﷺ spoke the truth. Tallest building, and now they're even competing in different lands to who has the highest. The decoration, the Prophet ﷺ from the signs of the hour, is the decoration, embellishment, and bragging about beautifying the masajid. How many masajid out there that we see everyone always focuses on and looking at very, very what? Decorated. Big and huge. Comfortable, and however, it's free of those people to sunnah. Where's the implementation with the people for the religion? Gone. But however, all they care about is what, everyone? The facade of it, the appearance, how it looks. What about the people? Where's the knowledge? Where's the completion of the books? Where's the education of the people? Where's the implementation, the effect on the people? Where is it? You just see a bunch of people with bald faces in the masjid, and their pants dragging in the hellfire, and them even invoking the message of Allah and falling into shirk and falling into bid'ah. And you really think that that's victory just because you got a huge masjid? That's disgrace. You wanted the dunya by selling out your religion. Allah gave it to you and removed the most important thing, which is the religion. So those are the affairs that the Messenger of Allah said. What, everyone? Be the signs of the hour. Decoration of the masajid. He said, تزيين زخرفة المساجد وتزيينها والتفاخر بها. Bragging about it, how big it is, how embellished it is, how beautiful it is, how big it is. Another narration of the Message of Allah, which inshallah some of them will speak about, or some of the narration will speak about, how the A'rab and the people of ignorance, they will become leaders and rulers over the people. That's clear. Narrations talking about Dhahab al-Salihin, how the righteous people will go away and they will become small in number, and the majority of people will be wicked and they will be given power. And the rise of the most lowliest of people will rise to power. The most lowliest and despicable of people and the most wicked and the most evil will rise and they will be given high positions. Don't we see that today? That's taking place today. On every type of level, probably. Al-Mabhath al-Ashir. The Prophet ﷺ talked about the signs of the hour. You'll follow the ways of those who came before you. That's clear. Follow the people of the book. You'll follow them in everything. In your worship, celebrating birthdays to the end of it. Prophet ﷺ spoke the truth. You see that right in front of our eyes today. Now listen to this part. The Messenger of Allah talked about from the signs of the hour, كثرة التجارة وفشوها وتقارب الأسواق. He said at the signs of the hour, there will be an abundance of businesses. How many people now have their own business now? Not condemning it, it's a good thing. But the Messenger of Allah said that that's from the signs of the hour. He said, كثرة التجارة وفشوها, and how it will be widespread, and the marketplaces will become right next to each other, meaning the stores will become directly next to each other. Also, the narrations which will speak about how time will also start to pass by very quickly. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will manipulate the time, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change the course of time. How Allah will make it in a manner that will be moving expeditiously. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will now in our eyes, what's been pertaining to us of what we perceive, I'll start to move slow again. I'll talk about that tomorrow. How it slowed down again. When and where? Allahu A'lam, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Also in regards to the Luhur al-Fuhsh, the appearance of abominable acts and statements, shamelessness, immorality, foul acts with statements and acts. The destruction and the breaking down of family structures. Qati'at al-Rahim. The breaking down of family structure from the signs of the hour. Don't we see that today? Especially here in America. America brags about it. Even though they don't see that this society is crumbling because of it. This society is crumbling because of it. وَسُوءُ الْمُجَاوَرَةِ وَالتَّنَاكُرْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Bad treatment of neighbors. And to the point people will start to act as if that they don't even know each other. التَّنَاكُرْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Walking away as if, and that's what we see today. Person could be getting shot or hurt in the middle of the street. I ain't see nothing. Close their door, mind my business. I ain't see nobody getting hurt. I ain't got nothing to do with it. I ain't hear nothing. I ain't see nothing. I acts like that doesn't even exist. That ain't even happening, right? But hey, what we gonna do? Hey, can you call the person, call someone to help? Oh, hey, I don't get involved, minding my business. That's how everybody's become now, alienated. Especially here in this land. Nobody cares. You there, I'm there. Don't mess with you, don't mess with me. Keep it moving. Prophet ﷺ said from the signs of the hour, kathrat al-shuh. I said this before Maghrib, right? Or after Maghrib. The widespread of miserliness, of one being extremely stingy. Shuh. Extremely stingy, tight-fisted. From the signs of the hour, that knowledge will be removed, and the appearance and the widespread of ignorance amongst the people. And the knowledge that we're talking about is not the knowledge of the dunya, that's the opposite. There's a narration we'll talk about where the Messenger of Allah said, ظهور القلم ويفتح القلم. That from the signs of the hour that the pen will be open. What does that mean? Meaning the knowledge of secular knowledge will be widespread. But as far as the religious knowledge, people will be severely ignorant in it. And the knowledge will be removed, and the widespread of ignorance in regards to al-ilm al-shar'i, of the affairs pertaining to Kitab and Sunnah, that will be lost. But the narration we'll talk about from the signs of the hour is that the pen will be open, meaning there will be a lot of literature, there will be a lot of secular knowledge, and there will be a lot of people writing different books and a lot of different things of that nature. That's what you see today. How many things? All you got to do is go to a library and see thousands and thousands of books of literature. So, what the Messenger of Allah spoke the truth. Said the pen will be open, there will be a lot of secular knowledge. A lot of people writing books, doing things. But will be raised is the most important of all knowledge, which is the knowledge of the ilm al-shar'i, which is of the Kitab and Sunnah. He said from the signs of the hours that knowledge will be sought from the asaghir. We'll talk about that later. Knowledge will be sought from the minor ones, or from the minors, or from the youth. We'll talk about that because that has to be explained properly. The Prophet ﷺ talked about from the signs of the hour is zuhur az-zina. That, and I don't think no one can deny this. He said the manifestation of fornication. I think that's self-explanatory. The emergence of fornication and the widespread of it. And to the point where it be made halal. It will be made lawful. The widespread of it. To the point we'll talk about the narration, it will become so bad to the point where a person will be set in the middle of the street. They will be intimate in the middle of the street. And to the point it says in the narration, he said, why don't you just move out the way, take that behind a wall somewhere. He said they will start to now be so shameless and nasty to the point where they'll start to do it in the middle of the roads. That's how the affairs will become. And if you see how things are going towards the direction, that's what you see where it's going towards. Just be a complete savage. Do what you want. Just do what you feel. From the signs of the hours, an abundant drinking and consumption of intoxicants. That's self-explanatory. Kathratu shurb al-khamr. Abundance of what? Consumption of what? Intoxicant. Not just alcohol, weed, drugs, to the end of it. All those affairs are considered khamr. From the day, signs of the day of resurrection, ظهور المعازف واستحلالها. The emergence of musical instruments and deeming it to be halal. I think that's self-explanatory. You go to a lot of Muslim countries and there you go. From the signs of the hour, the emergence of women who are clothed but still naked. I think that's self-explanatory. Women who are wearing clothes, but you still see what? Their parts through those clothes. Messenger of Allah said, he mentioned this, and the striking down of the authorities. We'll talk about that, inshallah. The authorities and the oppression of the authorities, meaning those who are in control from the cops, or from those who are cops. How the Messenger of Allah also said they will be oppressing the people. He says, now there's a narration where it says, يَغْدُونَ فِي سَخَطِ اللَّهِ وَيَرُوحُونَ فِي غَضَبِ اللَّهِ. There's a narration that says they'll come upon the morning in the wrath of Allah, and they'll come upon the evening in the anger of Allah. From the signs of the day of resurrection, the abundant spread of riba. That's another affair. No one should be surprised. Like I said at the beginning of the lecture, what I say, everyone? No one in here should be like, ooh, wow. What do you expect? The widespread of riba. From the signs of the hours, ضَيَاعُ الْأَمَانَ وَرَفْعُهَا. He says that trust will be lost when a person is entrusted with something, wherever, no matter what level it is. Whether it's not to keep something secret, whether it's not that someone is telling you something personal, whether or not they're entrusting you with a trust of not to do certain affairs in regards to their families while they're gone, not to transgress, putting you in a trust that he trusted you with, and you betray it. You prove it to be treacherous or perfidious, to the point where what? It becomes gone. The Messenger of Allah said all these affairs will be removed. There will also be a widespread of people giving false testimonies. And when they need to step up to bear witness for the truth, they will hide it. Now listen to this part. There will be an emergence or a manifest of sudden death. Sudden death. What they call it, Mawtul Faj'ah. There will come a time, and we see today. That's a sign we see right now. People dying all of a sudden. People just dying suddenly. Mawtul Faj'ah. It's also from the signs of the hour. From the signs of the hour, my friend will suffice with that. We go on. But those are the affairs that we mentioned, which the Messenger of Allah had talked about these times. The narration Tirmidhi, he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, also Imam al-Ban declared to be authentic. The Messenger of Allah, yati alaykum zaman, as-sabiru ala dini ka-sabir ala al-jamr. Will come a time where the person holding on or steadfast upon their religion will be like holding on to hot coals. The one being patient with their religion, trying to remain firm and steadfast upon it, will be like holding on to hot coals. That's what you see today. Because people are definitely falling off left and right. People who I know, people who think I don't know, but I do know. And it's scary for yourself because you want Allah to protect you from it. These are the ways you do it. First, by educating yourself. Then look into the solutions and the different methods that the Messenger of Allah taught us in order to what? Fortify ourselves for not being from those who will be destroyed inevitably. We'll talk about these affairs and we'll speak about them more in detail tomorrow. Inshallah. We'll talk about them tomorrow. Bi'idhnillah Jalla wa Az, because it's getting late, it's almost 11 o'clock. But that was just to inaugurate the Dawrah, to start it off, and there's more to come. Bi'idhnillah Jalla wa Az. So we'll stop here.
Just the first major sign of the hour, has it occurred? What is it?
Technically, not. Well, the death of the Messenger of Allah, some of them do complete that. They do consider that from the major signs. The death of the Messenger of Allah, the sending of him being a messenger, the prophet, and that's it. So already started, already commenced. Fadl. Our Sheikh Abu Suhail is going to give you all the details.
So what is the Christ from an Islamic perspective?
What's the what again?
I know what Christ is from a non-Islamic perspective. What is Christ from an Islamic perspective?
What do you mean Christ? Jesus, the son of Mary?
The Antichrist is the opposite of the Christ.
Of Jesus.
Okay, so Jesus is Christ. In Islam.
Absolutely. Well, not Christ the way he was crucified. We don't believe that.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know anything. I'm just
If it means Masih in the Arabic language means the anointed one.
okay.
The anointed one. That's it. Not because he was crucified. We don't believe Jesus or Isa, son of Mary, was crucified. He wasn't crucified. They killed another man in his place, but he never died on the cross. He didn't die on the cross. But they do call the Dajjal Masih. That's where I think people get the exactly. They say Al-Masih ibn Maryam, but in narration, the message of Allah also described the Dajjal as what? Masih. Masih. Why? It's like the opposite. Right. And the one who killed him, the Masih Dajjal is Masih ibn Maryam, Isa ibn Maryam. He'll kill him. Alayhi salatu wassalam. But he never died on the cross. Don't believe that. He never was crucified. Where the affair, like you said, where mixes comes in because both are called what? Masih. Anything else? Stop here. It's late. I know it's 11 o'clock. I apologize for the late class. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.